Boom, sneak attack. Like every
Oh,
stream we
Jesus
start,
Christ.
it
Oh my
just when you
God.
least expect it, we start streaming. Hey gang, it's Turner here with another episode of Guest Quest, the TTRPG interview and talk show brought to you by the Gimme the Loot podcast, the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition actual play podcast. So we'll probably talk the most shit about Jazz this week because he didn't bother to show up about the stream. Joining us is Evan Rabalais.
So close, just
So
Rabalais. Oh,
Rabalais.
you
There
were
we go.
hair there. Yeah.
I got in my head, man. I got in my head. Evan is a stand-up comedian based in Austin, Texas. He's originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's the host of Critical Hit, a tabletop comedy show where he plays dungeon master for 3 adventuring comedians. Evan, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And here to give Evan the business with me this week is...
I guess that would be me. It's Harlan. I play Todd on the Gimme the Loot podcast. And now I'm starting to question, when I wasn't here, was trash talked about me?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I missed it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. For the record, that's how you not showing up to a stream is how you ended up having to cosplay for our most recently achieved Patreon goal. Thank you, patrons.
I don't think that's how it happened.
Yeah, that's exactly how. That's why Jamie's on deck up next, 7 patrons away from that laundry folding stream, dressed as Tingle from Zelda, and we're only 17 patrons away from us buying a bear costume for Andrew to stream as Moyle, a photorealistic in IRL Moyle. So, but also here this week, in addition to Harlan, who realized what happens when he's not in the room,
is Jamie. I play Eldrin on Gimme the Loot, and I am also a future Tide Pod spokesperson. So
there we go.
Yeah.
And I'm Anthony, and I play Baba on the Gimme the Loot podcast. That's good.
Are you endorsing Tide Pods for their taste?
No, for the laundry.
Hey man, he is keeping it tied in to the content. That's the important thing.
I like what you did there.
But it's not about us or our non-existent sponsors. If you'd like us to show for you, email me at gm@gmdlcast.com. Damn it, so close. We're here to talk about Evan and his improv show. So Evan, originally from Baton Rouge, that's kind of where you got into the improv scene. What brought you to Austin?
The comedy. Baton Rouge, look, people are always shocked to hear this. There's not a thriving comedy scene in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
I'm not
really.
People I tell people that all the time, and they go, what? I could have sworn it was like a top tier city for stand-up and improv. And I'm like, I know. I thought the same thing. That's why I only stayed there for 7 years.
Yeah.
while I was doing comedy.
We were there for 3 years.
I did too.
Yeah,
you did. Born and raised there.
You only there for 2?
I got out early.
Yeah, I was in Baton Rouge for 3 years too.
I was there technically as a human for like 28 years. But I did comedy there since 2012, and then I visited Austin like twice a year to come do stand up here and do all the shows, and it was my number one destination for when I got the chance to move. In 2018, finally had the opportunity, took the plunge, and here I am, failing miserably in front of more people than ever.
But with such enthusiasm, that's the important thing.
Look, if you're gonna fail spectacularly. That's what I've always said.
That's right. If you can't baffle them with your brilliance, dazzle them with your bullshit, or the reverse of that. So talk about the transition from stand-up into improv, because I think that's kind of where the history gets us to what you're doing now.
So I started doing stand-up, like I said, in 2012. My friend John had been doing it for like a year or two and invited me out to a show of his. I show up to the show and it was dog shit. And I was like, oh, I could do this. Signed up for an open mic a week later and started doing comedy. And at that exact same time, some of the guys that did stand-up in Baton Rouge also were part of an improv troupe. And I went and saw them a couple times and they invited me to join the group. So I started doing improv almost the exact same time I started doing stand-up, but stand-up was my intro to it. I don't really do traditional improv anymore. I haven't done that since I moved to Austin, but I still have those roots, and improvising has definitely always been a strong suit of mine, especially when it comes to D&D, which is, I've never run a pre-built campaign. I've only run homebrews or stories that I write, because I really have a lot of joy in pressuring myself to come up with something good.
Oh yeah.
And the best compliment I ever received doing D&D was I fully improvised like a whole campaign from scratch. And like session 2 or 3, this guy who was in the group, Michael, just goes, "Man, this is such a well-written campaign." And I went, "I have not, everything today was improvised." Every single thing. So like that compliment kind of just set me on it. And yeah, once I had the chance to start doing the show that kind of combined those two things, I really not stopped since. This has become a real passion of mine, and I just want to hope to grow it into something even better.
So what edition did you start D&D on? With 2, 3, 4, 5?
So I've never been a huge fan of the high fantasy setting. So I actually didn't play D&D for a long time. I played a lot of either sci-fi related tabletops, or like there was a Legend of the Five Rings, which is like a feudal Japanese fantasy setting.
Mhm.
But I never really played D&D until 5th edition, when some friends of mine picked up the books and we just started to play a campaign together.
Yeah, 5e I think is, and intentionally so, the very easy to come into. I mean, it's very
Mhm.
welcoming to new players. It's taken the D20 mechanic or the D20 system and really polished it. And then it adds some really kind of bootstrap story elements that if you're not somebody who's good at coming up with that stuff, I'm a big advocate of the background system as a way
Mhm.
for new players to come up with a rich backstory for their character by just going, I want to be a sailor. This is how
Yeah,
sailors act.
it's a great addition to both handhold if you need it, but also just let you do literally whatever you want with the
Yep.
system. So
Yep.
it's kind of a perfect mesh of the things I try and do when I run a campaign.
So talk about how the show starts then, if you don't mind. So you're into improv, you're
Mhm.
into D&D, you know that there's some, how long has Critical Hit been going on?
Critical Hit's been going on since 2019.
Oh, wow.
Um,
So a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone through a few different iterations. Originally, it was just a stand-up show I did in a board game shop. Like the name kind of just was more thematic than anything.
Mhm.
That did not last super long. It was not the best attended stand-up show I've ever run. But then I had the opportunity to move venues, and with that change of venue came a bit more freedom and a
Mhm.
bit more like actual production value. So running like a D&D improv show was kind of in the back of my mind for a while. And I was like, well, here's the chance. Let's go ahead and just try it.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of thinking and processing and tinkering to really get a system down that works for a live show that's only an hour long.
Yeah.
But I think where it is now is a really nice sweet spot of actual D&D, but also absolutely not D&D, but
Mhm.
also comedy, but also entertaining the whole time, but also, always trying to bring in new elements and trying to improve the show a little bit at a time each month.
Yeah, geez, dude, an hour. That is that. I tip my hat to you. I have anxiety about doing a 3-hour one shot. Getting
Yeah.
an entertaining package put together that pulls in all the right elements in an hour is an act of production in and of itself, I imagine.
It's definitely the biggest challenge because it's very easy to fall into the same patterns when you only have an hour, because
Yeah.
you want to just shove as much D&D into that hour as possible, but you don't want to always do the same things. Like, yeah, you want to see goblins or orcs, or you want to see bugbears, and you want to see like all kinds of things, but you have to kind of step away from it for a second and go, as long as the story is fun and entertaining,
Mhm.
you can always try and throw some new things into it, but it doesn't always have to be go to the cave, kill the goblins, which in a regular D&D game, that is an hour, is go to
Yeah.
the cave and kill some goblins. So I also had to like really strip down what D&D is. We don't use anything except for a D20. It's the
Yeah.
only dice we use. And it's kind of both your, it's your roll to attack and also your roll to do damage. Like,
Mhm.
I want to shoot that goblin in the face with an arrow. Well, roll your 20. If you get an 18, guess what? That arrow goes through that goblin's face and he's fucking dead. That's 1 to 20 now becomes an indicator of not just can you do something, but also how effective it is at doing that thing. And it moves along quickly. Like, the crowd understands what the D20 is.
Right.
And if they don't, it's really easy to catch on. The character sheets aren't really super detailed. It's just, hey, here's what your weapon is, here's what your character is, here's your spells, and here's some items that you can use along the way. And it's a really bare bones stripped down character sheet that I got. I use a fastcharacter.org just to like whip up a quick character sheet and print them out.
Yeah,
And
that
super
reminds
simple.
That reminds me a lot of like the like the Lone Wolf adventure books that were kind of popular in the 90s, kind of that similar streamlined system that were kind of made for solo play that really reduced it down to a few dice. And yeah, I mean, it's funny how good how well Wizards of the Coast has branded the transition to the D20 system, because even if you don't play D&D, you know what a D20 is. Like everybody,
Right.
I think is.
It's become synonymous with just nerddom in general, the same way the Pokeball has. Like everyone understands immediately what it means when they see a D20.
What? Why are you shaking your head like you?
Because I didn't know. I had no clue what a D20 was. The closest thing that looked like a D20 was a category dice to me. That's
nerdy enough.
I'd never seen.
This really explains why you kept referring it to as the funky golf ball when we played the first 5 or 6 sessions. I edited that out, but the number.
It literally was the class that I took in Full Sail, which explained like where's the like the first time I had seen a D20 or anything.
Can't
like
hear
that.
us. We can Evan. We can still see you. But yeah, I don't know. Hang on just a second, guys. You got us? 1 second. Evan is also an accomplished mime. He'll be back.
I couldn't imagine doing stand-up comedy in a board game.
Well, wait for him to go. There.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay,
Sorry.
there we go. No, we said this is that Evan is also an accomplished mime, and this was his opportunity to. Harley was just saying he can't imagine playing a game on stage. I mean, because we don't do our play sessions really live stream. We got some special PvP content or some very kind of action oriented small bite stuff. We had Jeremy Cobb from 3 Black Halflings on to kill the guys. They survived, which is unfortunate, but
disappointed. Like
I was. I had high hopes.
Did you wow at my magnificence?
No. The pacing has got to be, I think, one of your biggest concerns, right? As far as
that took the longest to kind of figure out when I was planning the show, and that's the first couple times I did the show. I basically had to have a sheet of paper in front of me. It's like, here's what I want to hit. And the first like 5 or 6 times I did it, I was constantly having to scratch entire storylines out as the show was happening.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, it's already been 45 minutes. We got to start wrapping this up. So we got to skip that. And I think I finally nailed, just at least internally when I'm planning the show, about how many story beats I need to hit for it to hit an hour. Like, how many locations do I go to? How many people do they talk to? How many enemies do they fight? I also have to keep in mind, like, if I have people who do the show more than once, I learn kind of what that person does during the show, and I can learn their pacing also.
Yeah.
So like next month, actually the next one's on the 2nd, and I have a person who's been on, this is their 2nd time, and a person, this is maybe their 3rd time playing. So those 2 players both will have like prior experience. They kind of know the beats, they know the speed, they understand where we're going to go. And it really helps a lot when the players also understand that pacing. And I think I've kind of nailed it. Like, there's basically 3 to 4 locations they can go to and 2 big fights they can get into, and fill both of those things out with, dialogue options and different paths they can take to get to the end of the story.
Yeah. So the people that you have come on, they're all Austin comedians, or there are other traveling comedians that are coming in as well?
It's mainly Austin comics, just because they're the easiest to book because they're here. Yeah. But if someone comes into town and happens to be on a week that Critical Hit's happening, I'm happy to throw them on. Like the very first show actually featured a comic from Baton Rouge who was visiting town.
Oh, nice.
And he was excellent at the show immediately, because he was in the improv group that I joined as well. So we had a lot of really good chemistry. So he and I improvising on stage together was pretty compatible from the get-go at that show. And it's mainly just comedians, just because it is by nature a comedy show. But I'm always open to having, like, if someone interesting or entertaining wants to come on the show, I'm always like, yeah, let's have a spot open, even if you're not traditionally a comedian in Austin.
Do how many of or what percentage of them have played D&D or played a tabletop game before? Are they all? Is it is it just, hey, look, this sounds like a cool new comedy improv idea, I'll want to try it, or is it, oh shit, I get to play D&D and get a show in at the same time? What's the draw, you think?
I definitely have people who do have D&D experience. Actually, Ava, she's going to be on for the third time. She was in my D&D group for a brief moment before the pandemic hit. So she is someone who I thought of immediately for the show because she knows D&D. She understands what I'm trying to do here. A lot of people haven't played before, and this has been a fun introduction for them. A lot of people have played plenty, like this guy, Mike Wiebe, who's a fantastic comedian and musician in town. He hadn't actually played D&D in like decades, but had played before. And so it's kind of like a fun way to reintroduce him back into the world and get that muscle going again. But a lot of times it is also just, hey, comedians love doing anything that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get to be fun, be funny, have fun, and not burn their material, they're going to jump on it. So come do this weird thing. Most comedians will absolutely jump on that unless it's a thing that they just absolutely think sounds horrendous and not fun to do.
Yeah. Have you seen kind of, I mean, the creator community for tabletop content is just been on the rise since, I mean, probably even pre Critical Role. I'm not a big Critical Role guy. I can't 3 hours of a D&D show. I'm sorry. I love you guys.
Props to them, but I'm in the same boat.
It's not my bag. But I mean, obviously they're the biggest, probably one of the biggest success stories out of the bunch. But I mean, there's a slew of podcasts, a slew of streams, and more creator content seems to be have rushed into that field. Have you guys seen some benefit from that? Has that created more opportunity for you, or where do you feel like you're sitting at in that space?
Yeah, I think the expansion of D&D and pop culture has definitely helped as well. Like a lot more shows, specifically shows that Dan Harmon has a finger in, have exploded D&D in popularity. Harmon Quest was really big for the D&D community, and Rick and Morty has brought attention to it too in weird moments and ways. Even Futurama had a whole movie about a D&D campaign, basically.
Oh yeah,
and
Al Gore was a level 24 vice president, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And, every show I kind of start, I come out on stage by myself at the beginning of the show and just kind of do a quick intro, like, hey, here's what the show is. How many of you have ever played D&D before? Who hasn't? Do you guys know what this is? And I'll give it like a quick intro, like, here's what you're going to be expecting. And I get about 50-50 people who have played and people who haven't. Most people have at least heard of Dungeons and Dragons. You know, Stranger Things kind of help with that too.
Oh, heck yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. The only downside right now I'm experiencing is people do think I just stole the name Critical Hit from Critical Role, which is not fun. But my response is always like, you try coming up with a fucking name for a D&D comedy show. It's not easy.
Hey, ours is a Biggie reference and actually has nothing to do with the content of our podcast. So I hear you too. People are like, give me the loot. I'm like, well, so you play for randomized loot? I'm like, no. Is like loot a big part of it? No. Are you guys thieves? No, not really. Even our rogue doesn't rogue very much.
I rogue.
Yeah. Yeah. How many times has Todd made a stealth check?
Not many.
4.
Not many times.
Yeah. How many times does he kick down a door rather than pick it?
Oh, many times. Many times.
Did he coin the phrase "kick it before you pick it"? And
which would
yeah.
That would be a direct reference to Biggie, though, kicking the door.
I'm gonna steal that one. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah, that's our rogue. That's our guy. He's a swashbuckler. What are you gonna do? And guys, the rest of y'all pop in with questions as you have them, and then we'll turn it over to the chat in a bit.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
So you're the comedians that do it, do they come from an improv background? Because I could imagine that if you didn't come from an improv background, doing a stand-up right there wouldn't be your thing. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right. No, actually, I've had a couple of people who do have improv backgrounds, and early in the show, I kind of focused on that when I booked comedians, just because, you know, a little less worry in my mind. Like, if you've done improv, you know how to improv. But I also have always tried to merge the stand-up and improv communities. Kind of like how I said earlier, if you give a comedian an idea, like, hey, come have fun, they're going to want to jump on it. And a lot of stand-ups really don't do a lot of improv, and a lot of them would be very good at it. And so I use it as an opportunity, like, hey, people who don't do improv or haven't never been booked to do improv, come dip your finger, come dip your toe in the water and really experience what it's like to not have a safety net of your material on stage. And also maybe realize that improvising can be fun. It's not just some dumb, very pretentious art form, which it is, but it's not just that. And it's also like a good thing to have in your back pocket. Like improv really did help me be better at stand-up. And I'm very grateful for my time doing improv. And that's kind of what I want to bring to the table for other stand-ups. Like, hey, come try what you're not necessarily comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I would think that D&D would be a great access point for that. You know what I mean? Like, even if you haven't played tabletops before, find somebody from the last 2 or 3 generations that hasn't played one of the Final Fantasies. There is such a cultural context for some kind of, even Madden has role-playing elements to it, now. So
yeah. And the rule structure can help make the transition into improv easier. Like, that's why one of the biggest laughs I always get during the show is when a player is like, I want to try to do this. And I'm just like sitting behind my DM screen going this. You can try.
Yeah.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. You can certainly try is one of the most loaded phrases in the English language when it comes out of the DM's mouth. Oh, so are you touching it? You know what I mean? So you're going to walk around to the front of the statue. Let me just be clear. You're walking in front. We lost your audio again for a second there, but yeah, man, it's funny how universal. I'm fucking old. I'm goddamn old. And where previous generations where it wasn't as accessible and there wasn't as much community buy-in just right from the rip, it's been really kind of cool to see that transition to where it is a little bit more of a shared language among people. So
how many at the end of, because I'm guessing you're doing a comedy show, and like you said, it's 50-50 people who play D&D, people who don't play D&D. How many people probably do you think anyone ask you, well, I was thinking about getting into D&D from it? Like how many converters do you think you get from the show that you guys do?
Probably a couple. No one's ever like explicitly told me too many times like that. But what I do actually at the beginning of the show, just to kind of drive up engagement and excitement, is I actually give stuff away at the beginning of the show. And so like I've given away starter kits or essentials kits. I gave away the Rick and Morty D&D set that they have now. And I go like, hey, who hasn't played before? Oh, you. Would you ever want to? Well, here's how you can get started. And I'll give you the story. And just kind of like, hey, thanks for coming to the show. Thanks for being interested in something you've never tried before. Here's a way to get into it if you want. And if not, you can give it to someone else. So,
yeah, I haven't checked out the Rick and Morty box set, but I did get the Stranger Things box set kind of as a lark for my daughter. And then I cracked it open and I went, fuck, this is a legitimately great way to onboard people. Like both as for brand new DMs and brand new players, that box set is a very accessible entry point. I'm like, God damn it. Good job, Wizards of the Coast, you sons of bitches, you magnificent bastards.
Yeah.
I really didn't expect it to be that good at all, but it's a decent, easy, quick, fun but not complicated module. It's got a right mix of monsters and weirdness with just enough of the Stranger Things references. Right. I haven't checked out the Rick and Morty is because I like Rick and Morty, but I was like, I don't know how well that would translate. Like the Acquisitions Incorporated book from the Penny Arcade. I like the Penny Arcade guys, but the book I was like, so much.
Yeah. I didn't crack open the Rick and Morty one. It was just one of those things like, let's have a prize. And I don't want to always give away the essentials kit or the starters kit. So it's something a little bit different. And I just went to the crowd at the beginning of the show. I was like, who here thinks they're an asshole? You. Here's the Rick and Morty kit.
You, sir. You look like a dick. That's the portion of the show where you guys hurl D20s at the people in the audience that aren't laughing. That's the one that I've seen.
I have a giant foam D20 that I have during the show, both as a prop for any photo booths I might have, and also as like I'll chunk it during the show. I'll just like toss it around. It's fun.
So you guys, obviously it's a live show in Austin. Are you recording them? Are you rebroadcasting them? Assuming you weren't physically in Austin, Texas, is there any way to kind of access y'all's content in cyberspace?
Not at the moment. I've definitely thought about it, and I've definitely been trying to like kind of keep an eye on different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Part of the issue is just setting up a camera. I'd probably have to go with the record it and then release it later. I don't know if a live stream would necessarily work.
Yeah.
Although I
Yeah.
do think it'd probably be better just for keeping it kind of like giving people a reason to buy the ticket, you know?
Yeah.
But I've definitely put thought into it. I just don't necessarily have the equipment for it yet either. So we'll just, that's also part of the trying to make the show better each month is
Yeah.
just little improvements here and there. And I'm sure at some point, either a live stream or a rebroadcast is certainly on the table.
Yeah, man, because it's I mean, live streaming, I don't understand how it works. I don't understand how any of this works. They, for some reason, they let the old dude who learned basic when he was in school run this shit. And I have 4 fucking classically trained programmers on my cast.
Look, the only reason I've ever had a podcast is because I had a co-host who had equipment. I'm like, congrats, you are now also the producer.
Exactly. Wait, I've got a second one in pre-production because somebody approached me. It's like, hey man, can we do a spinoff and I'll be the editor? I'm like, okay, we can do anything as long as I don't have to edit another fucking minute of audio ever again. You bet. Let's go. Let's reboot.
I love
Fantasy
editing things. I love editing things. Like I was actually in film school. That's what my degree's
Oh,
in. So I do love the process of editing, but I only like editing stuff for myself. I hate doing it as a job. I hate if I have to do it like as a I have to release this every Tuesday. So that sucks. No, if I'm just editing a thing for myself, like my own stand-up clip or my own videos, great, so much fun. But if someone's expecting me to do something, nah, I'll pay someone to do it. I don't care.
As soon as you bring a deadline into it, it's a whole other fucking deal. So, so when you're not doing playing D&D in a comedy setting, if you're playing in a home game, what's your go-to class of choice? Like, what's your?
I have played as a DM a lot more than I've played as a player, and
So
I've
God.
never played. Yeah,
So
I
God,
played God.
yeah.
But whenever I have played, I've always just tried to do something interesting. Like I've never wanted to just be like the rogue with the dark backstory. Rogues are fun. I've played them before. It's so good. But I like playing against type on rogues. Like let's be cheerful. Let's be sneaky and cheerful. So I always play the rogues that love using their disguise kits. You know, that's the kind of person I play as. But I played as a dragonborn sorcerer. That was super fun. A character I never got to really play as enough was I had a water genasi who was a ranger that was super fun, a very fun class, but I only got to play 2 or 3 sessions with him and woefully underplayed. But one day, once I get those tables back together, I'll play that again.
Yeah,
I do have a character that I play from the DM spot though that I've injected into almost every campaign. On paper, he's a level 13 fighter from the get-go. He's always starts at level 13. He becomes my little story mover. He joins the group mysteriously, and he's like, "Oh, you should go here.
Yeah.
Let's go to this place." His name is Isaac Ironclad, and I describe him as the front of the box character. Just picture the cover art for a video game: long, flowing blonde hair, like shiny silver armor, a big blue cape, shield, and a sword. And he is so affable. He's like, "Hello, my name is Isaac Ironclad." He's so dumb. And every time I bring him to a campaign, the players are so suspicious of him. It's so funny. They're like, "I don't like the way this guy talks. I don't like the way he looks." Because he's also like, he will sacrifice himself to save children from a burning building. He is so good. They go, "I don't trust it. I don't like this guy. Get him out of here." And every time they end up being correct because the twist has only been actually revealed once because one campaign lasted long enough to bring it. But he's not actually a human fighter at level 13. He's actually a Rakshasa.
Oh God.
who came back from hell to seek revenge on an enemy of the party. So he joins the party to secretly find the guy they're trying to find, and then he drags that guy to hell. It's so stupid. He's my favorite person in the world, and I love him to death.
There's nothing that will make experienced players go paranoid than introducing somebody with legitimately good intentions, because they have such a hard time believing that wait, surely this guy is going to try and kill us eventually, right? The only people he ever introduces us to try and kill us.
Yes.
So
well, he also gets introduced in very funny ways, because the first time he got introduced, they're walking through a town square and they see a guy begging for money, and they roll for what does he look like? And I go, well, he's wearing tattered robes. Looks like he just bought some robes and tattered them early today.
They still have the tags on them.
yeah.
He's got diesel,
freshly tattered.
He brought diesel robes, basically.
The Jordans don't have a crease. They're very interesting.
He's wearing the robe version of jorts.
So suspicious. He's so fun. It's a very fun character.
Yeah, we I hear you on the tortured backstories. Well, quick show of hands on how many cast members currently on the phone killed their parents and their backstory.
Oh yeah.
Quick show of hands. I can't see your hand. All right, okay.
I don't have a killed parents.
Let's raise that hand a little bit higher. If you managed to kill your parents twice in your backstory, if you orphaned yourself and then killed your adopted father too, Eldrin. God damn it. Yeah, that's the lesson I've learned. No more writing backstories in a vacuum for these guys. Like session 0 has to happen together for me.
Todd is an
He's like, keep it
Todd
fully on board.
His parents are
fully
not alive.
Agree.
We don't know. We don't know if his parents are alive.
Quit giving me plot hooks, asshole. Just keep you've said that once already. That's already in the DM notebook. Don't worry, we'll get to it.
Session 0 is very important for that reason, but also, is anyone here actually hateful? Let's find out. You hate this other member of the group because of their sexual orientation? Well, get that out of here.
Yeah.
It's happened before.
Yeah. I mean, that's the legitimizing the session 0 as an actual part of the process, which they've done now, is such a big thing. You know what I mean? And I think is so constructive, because I mean, I've been at tables where it's just like, whoa, I don't know where this guy came from, but he does not want to play D&D with us. And I don't know why he bothered to show up. We live in the country. He drove 30 minutes to get here.
One of my other favorite tabletop games that I really wish I could play more often is a game called Fiasco. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or played it. And that game is always a single session, but it lasts probably 2 hours on the low end for each game. And they explicitly say in the rule book, part of the process is the setup. So that's why the setup is written as part of the rules and part of the game structure, is a lot time, 15 to 30 minutes for the group to have a setup before the game officially starts. And legitimizing session 0, like you said, is absolutely on my to-do list every single time.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, I wasn't a big social media guy, but as we got into the podcasting piece, obviously having to go out and do the promotion piece of it, the tabletop community, and look, there's asshats everywhere. I mean, there really are. You can't throw a rock without hitting an asshat. We live in Texas. We can't pick up a rock without hitting an asshat in some cases. But the going out into the tabletop community and being like, hey, look at us, and the response and how legitimately cool everybody was. I was like, this isn't the sewer heap that I've heard of. I'm a little bit worried. Am I on the right fucking Twitter? Because it's been surprisingly cool, and the tone of acceptance and the tone of, you know, people coming and finding different ways to express their identity and experiment with their identity has been really neat. And obviously, you know, there's still a lot of things that need to happen, and there's a lot of things that still need to improve. But that was one of the things that really surprised me, kind of coming into it and participating in the space.
Yeah, I've had a lot of friends of mine who, well, maybe not a lot, but more than 2 is a lot in a community like this, who kind of explored the fact that they were trans because they played the opposite gender in D&D. Yeah. And that was kind of like their first foray into exploring that part of themselves and that identity that they have. And it's just really cool to always watch when someone gets a chance to explore not just the game and how fun it is, but also themselves as people through something like that. So
you just really wanted to brag that how you have 2 whole friends, and now the rest of us feel really bad, for the record.
I don't like to brag, but I do enjoy it thoroughly. So it's
all right, guys.
It's an important part of my process.
So so you guys do a show monthly, right? When's the next one coming up?
It's February 2nd. It's the first Wednesday of the month at 8 p.m. every month.
And you guys are, I did kind of check out, notice you guys are requiring proof of COVID vaccination, and everybody's wearing masks. You are taking COVID precautions, which is awesome.
That's part of the wonderful part of working with Fallout Theater here in Austin is they are they've from the get-go been very transparent about their COVID policies, and they're very safe, as safe as humanly possible when you're doing comedy in a basement. So
how, I mean, obviously I can only imagine, you know, starting a creative endeavor on the cusp of the dumpster fire of the last couple of years. And, you know, not only obviously live shows were dramatically effective, but, you know, a lot of people who are, you know, starting off their creative careers, or even, you know, still establishing their creative careers, work in service industry type jobs that then were also, so there was really kind of a double whammy a little bit on that side. You know, you guys were able to kind of maintain through it. Can you talk a little bit about really kind of what that was like for you guys? Or
well, as someone who works in retail, I can tell you, yes, I was hit with a double whammy. And I didn't perform comedy for 10 months.
Wow.
In 2020. So it was like March 14th, 2020 was the last time I went on stage, and then I didn't do a show until December. I did an outdoor stand-up show, which was great. I loved it, and it felt really good to be back on stage. But it was definitely hard. It was the longest I'd ever gone the longest I'd gone without doing comedy of some kind before that was a week. That was the most time I'd ever taken off. So 10 months was a bit of a transition. But luckily I ended up moving in with 2 other stand-up comedians. So we kind of got to commiserate together the entire time. Like we were just staying inside, watching movies, and then just talking about how much we love and miss comedy, and how much we really just miss the gossip mainly. But it was still like that. But yeah, then, you know, retail, I ended up eventually the job I have ended up opening back up. So I'm back at work there too. And creatively, it's still taking a toll. I'm not doing nearly as many shows as I used to. To be fair, I'm not trying as hard as I used to when getting shows, because there's a part of me, it's like, I will do any show I'm booked on, but trying to get booked would require going outside, and I don't want to do that right now. So let's not. But it's definitely been a change and a transition, and I think it's kind of helped me find a different balance in my life, because I definitely was working too hard with comedy at times before the pandemic. So it's been nice to kind of set it aside in that way too. It's like, oh, time to self-reflect. Good, let's do that.
Yeah, there's got to be a real push-pull there, man. You know, I can only imagine, you know, my day job is logistics and shipping shit. And it's just like, oh yeah, the supply chain, you guys have heard of it now. Congratulations. I wish it wasn't, you know, so, but, you know, on the creative side, you know, we've been lucky that we've got to do this, you know, partially because of, you know, being shut inside. I was like, well, fuck it, we got to find something to do and be creative. And that's kind of where the drive and the time, because I just stopped sleeping. I haven't slept for like 3 years. That's how I've had time to do all this shit. And you know, that's really kind of was what's been the benefit. Oh, sure. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out, Anthony. I can never remember to check out the chat. All right. So, Wendell, Wendell asks, Anthony's brother, what made Evan choose the comedy road?
Comedy is something that I'd always loved without necessarily realizing I loved it. Because like I said, I was in film school. I love movies. I love making movies. I love doing that stuff. So I knew I wanted to be creative, but stand-up comedy didn't even really seem like a feasible option, because it's not really something people realize you can just start doing. And then the moment I tried it once, because like I said, my friend John introduced me to the world of what comedy is and how accessible it is. I did it once and went, oh, this makes sense. It's like retroactive. It's like, oh, the first album I ever bought with my own money was Jim Gaffigan's Beyond the Pale. Oh, I used to fall asleep watching Comedy Central half-hour specials. Like, oh, this makes sense in retrospect why this works out. So it was kind of like a perfect storm of loving it without realizing it's what I wanted to do, and then getting a chance to do it and realizing that it's exactly what I want. So I feel very fortunate to have like an aha moment with starting comedy and loving it immediately.
Beyond the Pale is such a great album, and the absolute best bit about Mexican food ever.
I
Ever.
could maybe quote that entire special. I listened to it so many times when I was a kid. It was
I watch it still on.
yeah. It's he's a great comic.
Oh, yeah.
Hot take. Jim Gaffigan's good at comedy. I don't mean to bring the controversy to this podcast.
I haven't finished his newest one that just dropped on Netflix, but I'm a big fan of Jim Gaffigan. And brings me into a question. Excuse me. Who would be one of your favorite comedians? Who's it? I'm sorry.
Kyle Kinane. He's my favorite comedian. Hands
Oh,
down.
Kyle Kinane is great.
I always have like a changing top 5, but Kyle is always number 1. I've seen him live a handful of times. He's really cool. We've met a couple times. One of the funniest dudes
His
I've ever
voice
met in my
is
life.
great.
It's perfect.
It's crazy great voice. The only one I've seen, I've seen a few of his like random stuff, but he's got that. Is it Degenerates or the stand-ups he does on Netflix? It's
really good.
It's really good. Yes.
The clan member bit about the chef, the clan member chef. It's really funny.
Yeah, I like Kyle Kinane. Okay.
Yeah, he was one of my first people who I met in comedy who kind of made me want to keep doing it, because early in comedy it's all just failure, and you have to find little pockets of success to hold on to. And early on, I went and saw him in Mississippi one night because my friend was opening for him, and we were standing there, and next to me was Kyle, and I went, "Oh my God, that's Kyle Kinane! Oh shit!" And I like said something in reference to what happened on stage. I was like, "Oh, this," and he like was like, "Oh yeah," and I was making him laugh casually. I was like, "Well, I'm doing comedy for 6 more months. All right, there we go.
Peace out." Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Dreeken asks, what has a bigger emotional impact, a joke bombing or a joke really crushing it?
A bigger emotional impact. That's really good. They both feel so different. It's hard to compare them, because like when a joke crushes, it's like you can see the Matrix once it happens. You go, "Oh, that worked this well." And describing what being in the zone is like it's impossible. You can't. You just know what to say, and you know how to say it. And when that's happening, literally nothing feels better than stand-up comedy. Like, it is the best feeling I've ever experienced. When a joke bombs, I guess it really depends on the context. Am I having a bad set? I can get over those. You know what? This crowd hates me. I hate me. It's fine. I'll get over it. When you're having I think maybe the worst feeling in the world is when you're having a really, really good set. Like let's say I'm doing a 10-minute set. Nothing crazy. I'm up there for 10 minutes. At 9 minutes in, I'm like, all right, time to close this baby out. Let's finish strong. And I do my closer, and it gets nothing. And you go, well, what do I do? Because that was supposed to be my exit. I don't really have a whole lot of one-liners that I can just pull out and hope to save this ending. And if I'm feeling okay, like if the rest of the set was good enough to kind of carry me, I can maybe improv a little, like, that didn't work. Let's then like out loud kind of work through that. But when it's just going bad and you just want to go, I'm tired of this, I just want to leave and wallow in this for a while, it hurts. It's so I'm really going back and forth on this. You know what? I'm standing by. I think a joke crushing has a bigger impact because it stays with me longer.
Yeah, that would have been my follow-up, is which one sticks with you longer. So
it's when a set goes well, it stays with me for longer. So I think that's what's going to be.
Wendell asks where you went to film school, and then also your mother's.
College.
I'm sorry, where?
Community college in Baton Rouge.
BRCC?
BRCC. The community college had a better film program than LSU did, and so I chose them. Also, I am not in student debt anymore, so.
Yeah. Hey,
you should pop your collar for that one. That is.
Hey, I went to.
I paid a nickel for my degree. That's all I had to do.
I went. I did a little bit of community college at Trinity Valley Community College, which has a nationally recognized cheerleader program and a couple of seasons of a show about it. Yeah, it's not as exciting. let's see what Mr. Bible Pants. Oh no, here we go. Saga Nadal. Who are your other influences other than Gaffigan? I think we said Kyle Kinane. Fire
Kyle's
off
a
a
big
couple
influence.
more of those top five.
All right, a couple more of the top five. I might be a little pretentious and also say that legitimately my friends are some of the funniest comedians I know. And the problem is that they're not famous. So it's hard to say like, hey, look at my friend. But I will also name people that I know that do have like albums or specials out that you should check out. Like my friend Mike, who I mentioned did the first Critical Hit. That was a D&D show. Mike has an album on Spotify. Mike Honore, Splenda Afternoon. He's a hilarious comedian, still in Baton Rouge, deserves all the success in the world. He is truly one of my favorite comedians to watch. Him and Howard Hall, both in Baton Rouge, are amazing. Here in Austin, definitely check out Andrew Murphy, check out Avery Moore, check out Danny Goodwin, check out Glenn Rose when they're on stage, Ava Smart. I can name so many great. Clara Blackstone is amazing. So many good. Leah Sampson, Carlton. God, so many good comedians here. Nationally, you can check out Matthew Broussard is very funny, and he's a huge nerd. So any nerds listening who like math jokes, Matthew Broussard is a name to check out. He's very, very funny as well. Mark Normand and Sean Patton, both from Louisiana, both very famous now, both very, 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 very good at comedy. So,
Mr. Bible Pants asks, what are some character classes that surprised you with how well or how poorly they work within your system for the improv shows? Are there any classes that work really great or don't really great? You're like, oh, I thought fighters would be super easy, but oh shit, no, it didn't for some reason.
Actually, yeah, fighter is difficult to work with just because it is. This is a complaint about fighter classes in the actual game is that they can be boring. And guess what? In the show, they can also be a little boring because it's just a sword or an axe or whatever they have. So if people are playing a fighter, they kind of have to make up for it with their just comedy chops. So class-wise, it depends on the player, but fighter is a real big possible miss. The best class, surprisingly, has been Bard so far. That's been really, really, really successful because the musical instruments have always added a really funny element sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a surprising number of bagpipes on our podcast for some reason. I'm not sure how we stumbled ass backwards into 3 or 4 players. Like I know, Bobby, you've got the bagpipes, right?
Yep.
And then I think that's what I said. There was flaming bagpipes on the Lizard Man during the.
I have a quick question also. Whenever you have a second.
Yeah, no, go for it.
How much longer? Because I may have to switch to my laptop and be offline for like 10 seconds.
No worries, man. We typically run about 60 minutes on these things, and
I will definitely switch over because my phone is dying. So give me 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Will do.
All right.
Let's not say anything the entire time he's gone, and I'll just keep this uncomfortable 10 minutes in with elevator music while Evan is gone.
I think my fighter has been pretty cool that I was gonna make.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah,
I tried to get you to do the double Dragonborns, the red and blue Dragonborns, Billy and Jimmy, and nobody would do it.
Jesus Christ. The double dragons. Well, look, man, we've got a join the party coming up in March, and you know it, anything goes on those characters. So I think I pre-made the characters last time for you guys, just to kind of give you guys some context for what I was looking for on those, but we'll definitely open it up a little bit for y'all to have some fun with next time. We are going to have to figure out how we do those because we've got 5 we have 5 Baba level supporters now that will be doing the join the party.
5 plus us.
Yeah, well, we're gonna figure something out. We'll have a conversation with the crew. We'll probably end up splitting that into 2 sessions on the same night, and I think we've got a cool way to. Yeah, well, I think I got a cool way of doing it. I just got to get with Jazz on how to coordinate it and make it happen. So I got my DM brain spinning on that a little bit. But Lee actually reached out about too soon to make characters for it, and I was like, and I was like, am I gonna do something on a boat? And I was like, no, we're doing something on a boat for the start of Baba's arc. Let's make this motherfucker on a train. So it's going to be on a train, and then when
massively decreased. So that's perfect.
All right, he's back. So yeah, we've got to do a little bit of strategizing with that and get with the Bob.
Snowpiercer-esque?
No, not Snowpiercer-esque. What?
Okay, I'm just
What?
Oriental.
There are so many other train-related
That's
stories
what I was gonna
other
go.
than
Oriental Express, like not Oriental Express, but
Polar
what is
Express. What?
it?
no. It's a
Santa!
It's the Thomas the
Tank Engine.
Thomas the Tank Engine, and you've
Oh.
spoiled it for everybody, you asshole.
Way
Is
to
it
go.
classic Thomas the Train, or do I get George Carlin Thomas the Train?
Wait, what?
Is there a new Thomas the Train?
Was
Is
it
it
George
not?
Carlin?
He was the conductor in that, wasn't he?
Yep.
That
For
was-
like, what was
was
it? Hey, Evan, you can hear us, right? We're good. We're
Yep,
back.
we're good. We're good.
All right,
We're
cool. We're cool. All right, guys. What other questions do we have for? Oh wait, hey, boop, here we go. Has there ever been anyone participating that rebelled against their character or otherwise broke the game?
good. Yeah. They're actually on the show this coming month too. My roommate and good friend Glenn. Glenn played a I can't remember the name, the race off the top of my head, the frog race. I can't remember what they're called exactly.
Bullywugs.
Yeah,
Bullywugs
bullywug.
are bullywugs or grungs, big or little frogs.
I think it was a bullywug. They played a bullywug named Vincenzo Ferrari. And let me just say that Glenn is an agent of chaos, and I knew that going into it.
Yeah.
And Glenn's off the bat. I was like, all right, I always start every show with, as any good D&D campaign does, you start in a pub. And so Glenn just goes, I want to find cocaine.
I know a guy that does this.
And so-
And
as
sounds
any
like we
good-
had one of those.
As any good DM, I go, roll for it.
Jim?
And Glenn rolled a 17.
Yep.
So they found
Yeah.
cocaine. And the show went about like that the rest of the time. Some highlights. They ended up breaking their dick because a barbarian woman crushed it to death. So
Yep. That checks out.
Are you playing with Moyle? Wait
yeah.
a minute. Is he playing with one of our characters?
No, man, I'm telling you, every good party needs that agent of chaos in it, man. Like if you look at there's always got to be that one wild card, but there's constructive ways of doing it. You know what I mean? There's being an agent of chaos, and then there's casting spirit guardians on your party members. So there's
So luckily when I have Glenn this month, but I also have Ava, who, like I said, has done the show for a third time now, and she's very, very good at understanding the pace and where the show needs to go. So I'm hoping that they kind of counterbalance a little bit.
Well, cool, man. So then I guess, as we're kind of coming up on time here, guys, any other questions for the chat for Evan? While we wait for those to percolate in, like they were going to answer me right that second because they have to fucking type. Technology. As somebody who is on stage and who does have an improv background, what would be a tip you would have for a new DM or a new player that might find that characterization intimidating, or that, oh my God, I don't feel like if I have the book in front of me, I'm going to know what to say. Because again, you're absolutely right. Improv is an art form, and there's a lot of study that goes to it and a lot of teaching to it. And like I said before, like that's asking a mechanic, what's the one trick I can do to make my car go faster? Yeah. But what's the one trick I can do to make my car go faster?
Well, an easy one I would do is find, if you want to go this route, try and find like an online video, like a video or someone who can teach some basic improv tools without necessarily, if you want to pay for an improv class, that's not the worst option, but right. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going through that unless you want to be an improviser. Right. But learning some improv tips just in general is going to be helpful with that. But in terms of like being a player, I'm big on role playing your character. So it's all about putting aside the embarrassment of doing a weird voice or saying things that your character would say. And worst case scenario, also don't be afraid of just being like, my character says this. Like, yeah, it can be a little jarring. It can be a little like cowardly, I would also say, but there's also nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying it can feel cowardly, not that it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't be afraid. My character, if you don't know exactly what, like if you're trying to be smooth, I don't know what smooth actually sounds like because I'm an antisocial nerd. So I don't know what that means. you can say my character tries to do this or wants to say this, and then work in tandem with your DM in that moment as to what that actually looks like and sounds like. And if you're a DM who needs some tips improvising, don't forget that they can't see behind the screen. I don't know if I've ever gone with an actual dice roll, unless it was a natural 20 and I needed to prove it.
Yeah.
Oh, unfortunately, you're dead. See right here, the 20, you're dead. Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, like the players don't need to know how much health the boss has. The players
Right.
don't need to know that they did or didn't actually pass that stealth check. Like, don't fudge everything to railroad them. But also, again, if it's going too easy, make it harder without telling them it's going to be harder. If it's too hard, knock a few health off, man. Like, they can't see behind the screen.
Yeah. You do have the ability to meter things up and meter things down in real time. You know what
Exactly.
I mean? And you know, you will eventually stumble onto that player to be like, now wait a minute, a gelatinous cube should actually have 72 hit points.
Anthony?
But no, Anthony's never
No.
done that. No.
I'm
Jazz?
not a
Anthony's
rules
never
Nazi.
done that. No. Yeah, rules lawyering is something that I have.
Sorry.
I mean, you know, that's the one thing. Is like, man, that's the. I have no patience for rules lawyering at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, so if you're in Austin, go see the show. Make sure you're vaccinated. Make sure you got to go N95. Get out there, see the show. We'll put links up to all your social media and everything when we when we tweet this out, and also because we'll take this and we'll rebroadcast this in our podcast feed a couple weeks from now, and so we'll re-up on all the links and everything when we send it out then. But is there any way anywhere online other than the socials and stuff where they can see, even if it's not the Critical Hit show, like your comedy or some other way that we can get people in here and get some eyes on your stuff?
Following on social is always the best way to support comedians, honestly. The more people who follow us, the more legitimate our careers, which is a very, very sad state of affairs, but it is the way it is. So yeah, Instagram, Twitter, I'm pretty active on both of those. I do have a YouTube channel that I do have some stand-up bits thrown up on there. So if you want to check out my stand-up, I do have it up there as well. And Critical Hit Comedy Show on Instagram, Evan Rabalais spelled phonetically on Instagram and Twitter. I don't spell it with my actual spelling because it's very confusing, and I understand that too. So yeah, I'll send all those links and have y'all check that out. But yeah, just following on the socials is honestly the best way to do it. And if you have any questions or any, want to see me, just let me know. I'll be wherever I'm wanted.
So we will get all that out there, guys. Any last minute questions on the panel for Evan before we go?
I don't think anyone.
No.
I don't think Evan's heard
No.
Jamie's voice.
I don't. Yeah, I think Jamie's been awfully
Listen,
quiet.
I had questions that got answered, so
You
I don't know.
You know what it is. You don't
cool.
want to put on the tingle. Is the deal. You do not. You're trying to, like, if I don't say anything, people won't remember that I'm here.
I guess
and they won't be incentivized to fucking Patreon sponsor.
How often has the crowd derailed a show for you? Like, does that happen often, or is it something that you usually can work around pretty well?
The only way a crowd has ever derailed a show, for Critical Hit at least, is by not laughing. And it's like, oh, this isn't going well. Great. I have to change something. Stand-up is different. You always get people who will interrupt the show or whatever. And apparently Zork has a question for me. I'm seeing the chat now.
Oh, hey. Here's Zorks for Evan. Wait, Mr. Bible Pants, why are you speaking for Zork Fox? What's happened? Do you have any examples in which, geez, guys, you got to simplify these fucking questions. I have to read them in real time. Here's Zork's question for Evan. Dothst thou havest, do you have any examples in which, God damn it, and when you add chats while I'm trying to read, I can't fucking doesn't help. Hold still.
Do I have any examples in which the players have created their own villain by way of improv
There
or
we
mistakes
go.
or the like?
Thank you very much.
I don't know if I truly understand the question, unfortunately. If you mean have they made themselves the villain? To me, as a personal human, yes, I hate some of my players. I've had to yell at players off script before, like, "Hey, that's not what your character would do." But I've definitely had, in the other way, I've actually had players who have integrated a villain into the story that I didn't expect, either because it really worked with their backstory that we were working through during the game, or they basically talked to the wrong person the wrong way, and it made sense to bring that person back. Yeah, that person is out of the chat. Yeah, that's exactly it. They're talking to someone who isn't a villain, but they say the wrong thing, and now that person, it makes sense to bring them back as a recurring villain role because they have now been made angry by the party. Yeah, that's definitely happened.
Yeah, that's all the Party of Five does, guys. By the way. Just think about how many arrows have sailed off into villages from Jamie alone, and they are amassing a rogues gallery that is quite impressive.
Because I sign my arrows, obviously. So
you absolutely 100% inscribe in gold leaf Eldrin arrows. Eldrin on one side,
like my number 2
Thanaros
pencils. Yeah,
he's a fucking prick. Jesus. All right, gang. Well, we are going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you, Evan, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the chat. Be sure to when we throw up the links and everything, I'll drop them all in the Discord for sure, and then we'll get them all in the show notes when we rebroadcast this thing out. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Evan, for coming on, and everybody, hope you enjoyed the show. Make stream in